Welcome to Cosmic Brilliance, folks, where we will be covering some of the most important topics that you need to understand for full liberation of your body, mind, and soul. This involves the marriage of quantum physics and spirituality. For those of you that feel overwhelmed or intimidated by those subjects, you will learn in this show today simple explanations of how this applies to you in creating a more dreams come true reality. So today will be a roundtable with two of the most, and I mean the most brilliant, which is why I wear the sunglasses, guests who have unsurpassed all odds, both born in Iran during the war and have empowered themselves as fulfilled creator quantum beings, which is your destiny as well if you choose. So I'm removing my sunglasses and I think I can handle the brilliance, maybe, barely. Because Shehnaz and both of them radiate so much light. You'll see that yourselves. Okay, here we go, folks. Shehnaz was born and raised in a patriarchal culture in Karachi, Pakistan. Despite being raised in a culturally imposed cage, she followed her inner voice. At the age of 21, Shehnaz's first transformational journey brought her to Los Angeles via an arranged marriage, graduating valedictorian and magna cum laude from UC Irvine, finishing in half the time, of course. Shehnaz then began working as an all-systems cutter for Hughes Aircraft, Boeing, and then went on to be an aerospace rocket engineer for NASA with National Defense Agency clearances, focusing on Artemis 3 SpaceX mission landing on the far side of our moon. She is also a quantum catalyzer, spiritual alchemist, Reiki and QHHT certified, Kabbalah trained speaker, nutritional health and life coach, and mother of 4 boys. Whew. Okay. Whoa.
Wow. I'm like, holy shit. I think you've done a most incredible job just giving my bio to myself.
Today, she is living the adventurous life of a Star Trek cadet, whereas she puts it, science fiction intersects reality and passion leads to prosperity. Sign me up. Her current position is an aerospace engineer for NASA, combined with her passion to serve humanity with her deep-rooted heritage and ancient wisdom, converges science with innovative technology to honor our multidimensional quantum existence. She is also the author that is on screen today of this wonderful book, The Quantum Being, a self-sustaining and magnificent human craft to self-ignite and launch your magical life. She makes quantum physics understandable, and I am telling you, this is the book I am recommending for everyone. It's a great introduction. It's even great for advanced people. It is the most challenging thing to do is to take amazingly complex subjects and put them into an understandable, relatable, with great pictures style. Both of you are excellent. Both my guests are excellent at that. So you've got to buy this book. That's it. Okay, so Shehnaz embodies what I would say a stellar example of breaking through extreme cultural programming and challenges on all levels, which you are about to hear. And she reminds me of a phoenix rising up from the ashes, refusing to be limited by others, and what I call a kick-ass yet loving systems buster.
Wow, my God. Thank you, Marilee. Thank you, Marilee, for making me realize I can take credit every now and then because you feel like you're really encouraging that from me. And I just love the way you are expressing something that even I am not aware of. Like, it's so interesting how you, like, yeah, it comes from your heart. And I think that I kind of appreciate what you're doing, because I don't think anybody knows how to do it as well as you're doing. It's
Oh,
like,
well,
wow, it's just so amazing, right? Yeah, it is very amazing to me. And I think that that is pretty much what we are actually here to do, is to start paying attention to things that we have not paid attention to, right? Like it's almost like, nobody's paying attention to who is packing your parachute while you are having a successful skydiving mission, right? So when we start going into the space in between, that's where all the magic is hiding. And that's where all of us are hiding our creativity, like you are magnifying merrily here. It's just so, it's beautiful. Yes.
thank you, my love. Well, I know you're humble, but I'm not into false modesty. You guys are extraordinary, extraordinary, and exemplify 100%, which people are learning to step up to. So it is my honor. Okay, so, oh my goodness. So, the other thing you both represent, which when you've heard Amir's gift, and it is a gift that he is going to provide at a very nominal fee, you will understand the importance of why you've gone through so much hardships, and you will understand the importance of our life's sacred journey with the goal of developing the ultimate resilience. And both of my guests, Shehnaz and Amir, exemplify perseverance, fortitude, and resiliency. So you all are in for a real treat. Again, my shows, if this is new, my shows are education. They're not just entertainment. Most people have to listen to them 2 or 3 times. Each show will save you at least, in my case, 45 years, but in most people's cases, 10 years of studying. Okay? We're simplifying it today, and these two gifted beings are able to do that in extraordinary ways. So I'm deeply, deeply humbled by both of you, and welcome Amir as well.
Hello. Uh, love all of you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really look forward to this. It's going to be awesome. There's no other way.
Well, and just briefly, we don't want to cut you out. Amir is, most of you know, born and around during the war, has the 7 degrees, engineer, scientist, inventor, teacher, wizard, shaman, extraordinary healer, all of that kind of thing. So, whew, okay, let's go. So, Shehnaz, I'm going to start with the first 5 questions going to you since you're our key new guest today. And I would like to start, I think, with you sharing. I know you've probably done this hundreds of times on other shows, but sharing your life, starting with all I'm going to say is the cultural surgery that you underwent at the innocent age of 7, and continue through the major challenges and steps that brought you to America and how you ended up as a NASA rocket engineer. And take your time.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I guess I'm going to start with the fact that when I became aware of my existence, my presence in this limited earth, as soon as I became aware of it, I started picking up things that was pertinent to me, to understand how to create the exit strategy, because I think that I knew that there was something not right. And from that point on, like the fact that at the age of 7, the FGM that occurs in our culture, it's basically, they actually say that it occurs to purify the soul, right? So that is the reasoning that usually give when asked. That actually, when it happened, I think the thing that actually I noticed was the betrayal. I think that I noticed was that how a mother is willing to give their child for something that's part of the system, and they never participate in it without realizing that they don't participate because they don't want to see their baby, crying, while that happens, right? So I think for me, the observation that I made was it hurt a lot the observation I made was that I cried for my mom. She wasn't there. And the observation I made is when I came with a lot of pain and bandage, is that you cannot say that to anybody that you went through it, right? So if you think about it, that is what it's the layered trauma, right? It's like all the thing is saying that you just shut up and accept it. And I think that I mean, now, I mean, when I'm thinking about it, that was going to the black hole, right? That was going to the extreme where you pretty much are told in every which way that you have no right to exist. You truly have no right to exist. That to me is a lot, right?
Yes. Yes. And for those, if I have it right, they may not know the acronym. I believe that's when they cut off the little girl's clitoris, isn't it? Or, or what is the actual surgery? So
Yeah,
people,
so it's basically classified as female genital mutilation, and the fact that they use the blade pretty much, they are not trained. It's actually done underhandedly because even the government doesn't approve of it. So that all of that, there's just so many layers of hidden agenda in it, right? And the very fact that people travel, if you're part of that cult, then no matter where you are in the world, you are meant to go there and get it done at certain age. And everybody who follows the belief, they do it.
out of peer
And
pressure and shame, a little bit.
yeah, and then they don't realize that how they're collecting trauma of self-sabotage on the woman. Like, so the mother is doing it to their own daughter, like this whole system that when we start understanding like any kind of long-term abuse that has occurred, like you see how self-fulfilling prophecy plays in this storyline too, because we are living in a patriarchal culture, but it's the woman that is also agreeing to these things by not even talking about it, by letting their daughter do it, by women who even come and move to other countries, like even America or France. Everybody takes their kids back to Pakistan and India and gets it done. So you see that this is actually a classic example of how in the peer pressure, we talk about that you are eating an animal while you're saying that you don't want to, right? It's along the same line, is that we are hypocrite.
Yes. Yes. And also sorry, this is my feeling. This is the age of Reformation. It's not the age of tradition, blindless tradition, when it's not updated and for the benefit of all. That's my viewpoint. So this is a time to reevaluate anything. And just what you shared so far, the little you shared so far, I see you as victorious at healing the entire ancestral lineage. Okay, which was one of your missions. And right now, you can cry and grab some tissue right now. Right now, there are hundreds going back in time that are all applauding you.
And the irony is that even now, when I actually, and can you believe that I had enough balls to talk about this in the chapter 1 of my book, and very few people, even in my community, knows that I have done it.
Oh, I'm sure. I am sure. Yes. Well, as we said, you're a systems buster and much more. So, yep, it's huge. And that's why I wanted to start there. I know it's traumatic, but right away, most people would just be totally scarred for life and shut down and just follow the herd mentality.
So I think that kind of was a very deep point in my life where I was turned off on every aspect of my creativity because I was extremely, I was involved in debates, I was involved in dancing, I was doing everything school can offer. And when that happened to me at the age of 7, and then I joined the madrasa, I was told every day that you can no longer basically do any of these activities. And then when I was going to madrasa, my name actually was given to me by my dad, which was given inspired by the the princess in Iran. Actually, I think there was a princess in Iran with the name Shehnaz, and apparently that name wasn't accepted by the community, by the religion, the Bora religion. And every time when I would go to madrasa, they would say your name is this today. Like they would give me a new name, and then I would come home and I would tell my dad that, oh, my name is this today. And then my dad was such a rebel, so he would look at it and say, no, I'm going to stick with Shehnaz. So even my name, so if you think about it, I was challenged at the level, at the foundation level. And of course, my mom doesn't like it when I tell her that how much at the, by the time I was like, I don't remember the exact precise age. I remember that it was around like 10 or 11 when I actually could get on the stool on the third floor in my apartment building and can look down and can see. And I was very, very thin. I knew that if I jump off of it, I would definitely die, right? So I would do that type of things. And nobody knew that, but I was wondering if I want to stay on this earth, right? Because when I would look up through the sky and I would realize that whatever is behind the veil, I want to understand that. But how am I going to understand that while you're held back with basic thing like going to school, basic thing like what is your name, basic thing that you actually are a human who has same right as any other human, right? So all of that was questioned right from the get-go. And the interesting thing is I started sharing my concern, with all my aunts and everybody that loved me. And when I would talk to them, they would say that you think too much. And then they would say that we all have a very, very bad life. So you should not complain about it, right? So these were the things.
Let alone question it.
Right. And it was interesting because, I mean, if you think about it, they were very right. Because when I would look at their life, they had lots of challenges, right? But for me, it was kind of like, and then what I started doing was that when people would come from America, because I knew that they are coming from another planet, America is kind of a different planet. So I actually knew that if I talk to them, maybe they'll answer some of my questions. So I had cousins, whom I would ask that, please tell me about the black hole. Please tell me that, how does this work? And then they would look at me because they were not into the same questions as I was. So they would kind of, I mean, just because you're in America doesn't mean you're interested in black hole, or you want to go that deep dive. But they could tell that, I'm very eager. And what I started doing is just because, so I had a goal that I wanted to speak English, right, one day. So I started praying in every single prayer that one day I would speak English. And then I would take the dictionaries and things like that. And then sometime I would just, look at the word and work on it on my own, right? But it just never went anywhere because there was just too many reasons to not understand it as a language. It just never happened that way. But of course, the doors open up. But the whole interesting playground was that it was like a sleeping with the enemy, where you are getting trained to exit this big reality, right? But you have to be at the point where you're able to break the shell so you can come out as a complete chicken.
I would say a complete, I don't know, I think a little bit more than a chicken.
Maybe a
Actually,
dragon.
you're right. Chicken doesn't work in this case because I had to have balls to do what I did.
Like a tiger jaguar.
That's very true. That's very true. So yeah, so it's an interesting thing that, like, in the whole storyline, I'm realizing that I basically felt very, very suppressed. And then I knew somehow that there was exit strategy, like either die, which I decided not to because I worried about my mom. So there was always like the obstacle, there was solution, then there's another obstacle. But the fact that I did not give up and made that spiral is the reason that I ultimately attracted my exit through my first arranged marriage. And even though arranged marriage itself became another test, it was interesting that it took me a while to, to understand that and exit that storyline as well.
Tell people about that. Okay, so you grew up and you and both Amir threw all your energy into studying. Like just study, right? And so you didn't socialize or play with anybody much or anything like that. Okay. Now, what I'm getting very strongly and it's obvious is you're a star seed and more. But did you ever look at the sky all the time and look up at the stars and go, oh, home, or anything
Oh
like that?
yeah, I mean that was like the first thing because I was raised in an apartment where in the balcony we had a swing. So that was the best thing that I remember from my childhood is being on a swing and looking at the sky and actually thinking that how can I be trapped in this limited reality because it's so damn limited. You feel like that you don't have as much freedom as you like.
Well, that was part, and that's part of what we forgot in the game. The other thing I'm getting, and then we'll go back to because I want you to finish like how you got to America and stuff is now this is just my take, okay, on you I'm sharing is I call it the double spy approach. And beings from the light, come to the earth and they're making the decision, of course, knowing they're invincible and blah blah blah. And they're like, no problem. Okay, I think I can do this right. And oh, you'll have the drunken parent, you'll have the this, and they're like, got it, because you already right. And you're also coming in to serve because you're a huge service. And I think you were smart enough to cover your butt. And what I'm sensing is not only you came from higher star advanced souls, both of you did with super high IQs, which was your life buoy. It was your life buoy. Plus, you were going to insert into your soul purposely. You either jump off the balcony or you insert into your soul purposely that you are going to do forbearance and perseverance no matter what. And you made sure that you had a dad, even though there were issues, right? You had a dad who was actually a rebel. So he couldn't fully do it, but secretly he was really proud you were doing it. And
That
then,
is very true. That's so true. And that actually became obvious afterwards, right? Because when you're in with them in a very close cycle, then sometimes you don't see that love or that realization or that awareness. But my God, it completely turned around. So basically, what happened was that I actually, at the age of 21, I was a bridesmaid to one of my very, very close friends. And I'm attending this wedding and I'm wearing the sari for the first time. And then my cousin, who basically have been asked by my first husband's family that do you know any girls, so they see me in a wedding and basically it kind of makes them think that oh I'm ready. So the universe was choreographing a plan for me to meet this man who had to go through the process of arranged marriage, and I was the fifth girl that he saw, and then he did not see anybody else because he wanted to be with me. So that story, right, is what I created as a way to come to America. And and it was a life-changing experience in many ways because it's, I mean, in every which way, like I came to a country where for me to survive I have to do the very thing I desired all my life, and that is to speak English, right? So in a way I was praying for that playground to open up, and it did open up, but it came with not just learning English, because English is not just a language, it's a culture. So I had to learn it all when I came here, right? And then I had to learn how to live with another man, and all of that learning kind of had lots and lots of variables. However, the quest to understand myself and still manage the traditional life, right? I kind of wanted to do it all because I thought that I could do it all. But after 10 years of being in that life, and realizing that following everything that I was taught up to that point, which was 25 years ago, that realization was where I truly let myself go from all the things that I thought that I had to hold on to navigate the matrix, right? To live in this world. I think that realization occurred partly because I was looking at myself and my life and the choices I had made and the burden that I acquired, that no matter what, the most of the work comes from me. Majority of the people are only slowing me down. They are not helping me. They're just providing the labels that the society has imposed on you to keep the Matrix Truman Show going.
that's well said. And even your husband was probably instrument put in there. These could be agreed to ahead of time, but of course, once you get here, whatever. And his sole purpose was not marriage. His sole purpose was to get you to America.
Yeah, that's true. And that
right?
is right. That is exactly true. That is exactly true. And can you believe I had to make my life so challenging? Is that right before he proposed, I actually wanted to come to America with my TOEFL score. And I had already prepared for my TOEFL. I had told my dad, but my dad was not even in my favor of my education. He's not going to send me to America, even though I told him that I will go completely based on my merit. And I even had a friend in the university whom I had convinced. So both of us were thinking that if we both go together, then the chances are higher because, generally as a woman by themselves, they're worried that somebody will kidnap us or we will marry somebody, right? So this way we are going to be easily controlled. But even then, that plan did not work. So the thing is that there was just like, it was like I had to be tested to the point where I had to come to that, that pressure, right? The pressure of making a diamond out of yourself, which requires you to go much farther than general, consciousness would go, I guess.
Exactly. And a couple other things are coming in here. Are you aware of receiving downloads
I am
when you
not
were
only,
younger at all or anything?
I'm aware that all of us are actually receiving downloads, but whether we are able to access it, that is where it depends on when we end up availing it. Because at the end of the day, even when we don't understand it, it gets into the buffer system. So it becomes a storyline on Jacob's ladder of how many steps you're going to take to access that information.
Well said. Now, I don't know if this is true, but the thought's coming in, so I'm going to share it, then I'm going to shut up. is we work, as you know, on so many different levels, and you're probably smart enough to do as much contingencies before you came here, right? And then we forget and have to play the hardship game. I keep getting that whatever you want to say in your sleep or multidimensional or before coming in, however you view the illusion of time, you not only are brilliant, but you ensured that you would have a special proclivity to languages and science. Because those two things, you came in as a scientist and all kinds of things, but those two things were absolutely a necessity for the success and your survival. So I just am like, all these things we don't know, but that could be a strong possibility. That's all I have to.
Oh, 100%. And the fact that I was always curious, right? I was looking at the dewdrop and wondering that why would the dewdrop will retain that water inside the drop, right? And then I would ask those questions. And the fact is, I'm talking to all these people who are basically telling me that you are not going to have any kind of life. So can you just shut up, right? I mean, that was a very huge conundrum that you are running into all the time. So yes, so I think that the whole quest and the built-in, to me, like, we already have our DNA is a fractal antenna, right? So it is connected to the quantum field and everything that we have access to. And even though everybody's saying no to you, to everything, you're kind of like trying to do your data collection based on whatever, and you're understanding that why, like, I have all these questions and why I feel like there's so much more to life and why these people are saying, no, that's not true. So I think that that dance is happening within you. And I believe that the good thing about living on a mental plane is that you are basically kind of managing your own self
Mm-hmm.
because you are not as distracted by the physical and emotional because you're living on a mental plane. And I think that it became my savior. That is why, both Amir and I have this in common is that because we relied on our mental, because that's where we found our safe heaven, right?
Yeah.
So we knew that this is where we're going to go. And we also knew that the question that we have, the answer lies somewhere, not with the people that's surrounding us, not with the religion that's surrounding us, not with the bureaucracy that you run into in the organization, right? So I think as soon as we had that understanding, we decided to become our own savior.
Well, yes, because there is no savior outside of yourself. Way to go. Way to go. Okay, so I still want people to know that haven't listened to your other interviews a little bit about. So folks, she ends up having an arranged marriage. What was the questions he asked you, which were so great, and what you said back? Okay. And then what did you find when you actually arrived? That's like
Oh
all
my
shocking.
God. In that 1 hour, it was funny because in that 1 hour, he asked me questions like, "Can you cook?" I mean, you can just see that this was very important to him. Then the question was asked that do you speak English, right? And so I said no to that too, because I said I can tell you Newton's first, second, and third law of motion in English, but I can't say anything else in English because I don't know how to speak it, you know? So I was just very honest about it.
Mhm.
Then when he asked me, how can you cook? I said, no, I can't cook, but I can make rice and tea, you know, because I could. So I was just telling him no, but there was always a little bit of yes, right? And I think he just liked a little bit.
Well, you're also gorgeous. Come on. And he probably heard through the grapevine how smart you are.
Right. I mean, I had a valedictorian. I was a valedictorian in my college by then. So when he came, he was aware that I have been a valedictorian. So he knew that I had a potential to be able to survive in America. And he himself was in a master in engineering program. So he was smart enough to definitely, and he also knew that he cannot afford a household without another engineer. So one of the questions, by the way, I asked in that interview, which I don't know how many girls asked, I said, will I be able to continue my education? Because that's the most important thing to me. And then he said that, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to finish my electrical engineering degree even afterwards. Because remember, I already had a plan to take TOEFL and go there. So I told him that this is the most important thing to me. And he said 100% in agreement, because in America, two people have to make money to survive. That's what he told me. So that is the reason I said yes to him.
Right. Okay, so then you get there after hearing about all the beautiful American dream. You get there and he takes you to his humble abode.
Yes, yes. My biggest shock arrived even at the airport, right? When I saw all the people, because I'd never seen like white people, you know, with colored eyes and so tall and so beautiful and all of that. And even though, you know, you see it in the movie and the Star Trek and all that, which was my favorite show, but at the same point, I didn't understand the culture because I really didn't know the language. I actually was very amazed by them because I felt like that they are happy people. Like I felt like that there was, like, where I was living and where I came from, I felt like people were more suppressed. So for me, actually, and you know, I came to LAX airport, right? So and I felt that people were less suppressed, and I felt that the place exude more happiness than the place that I had been. So I was able to feel the difference in the place. Only challenge I had was that I was a complete new to the culture and the people and with the man that I had just married. So that was the variable I had to fight. And then I came from an upper middle class, and as soon as I entered to my studio apartment where he was living, it basically was very small. And not only that it was small, there was no bed. And not only that there was no bed, there was no space for my clothes or anything, because he came to marry me, but he had no space. Like he did not plan for it. You see, it was very messed up. And there was no, so basically I had to learn to embrace all that. Not only that, I could not make a phone call to my mom because we couldn't afford it. So the only way I could communicate was to write the letter. So all of that compounded, of course, and I basically realized that the trap is much deeper than the one that I had been.
And you're like, oh no. Yeah. Again, resilience, perseverance, forbearance got you through it.
I was
Oh,
just thinking that if I'm in charge of this simulation matrix, then why did I create such a complex challenge for me? My goodness gracious. But
well,
yes.
well, remember, that will be answered in what Amir is going to provide for people, which we'll talk about at the end, because you're going to be able to put the whole crazy thing together, going, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
And
like,
then
oh
you're gonna
wow.
go, wow, I'm really cool, and I didn't know it. Okay, but we're saving that to the end. Okay, so you go through that, and then you go through all your interviews, right?
Right. So,
It was another woman who took you when you got in and told your story, right?
oh, you mean like in terms of what?
Well, of course, you raised two boys in the meantime, and then you had two more, right?
Yes. Yes. So, which woman are you referring to that helped me in my life?
The one at Irvine who got you in. Was she the one that got you? Oh, she got you the
That
job.
was she. That no, no,
Friday.
actually, right. Actually, that's a very good thing you just said, because you're right. Because at the end of the day, the pivotal point in my story was that I married him. I was willing to entertain all the challenges that came to live in America. I wanted to continue my degree. And then when I apply for admission, I get denied by every single university. And the reason was because right after I got married, we have annual system. So when I went back to, because I had to go back to Pakistan to even take my 1 year exam. And because he was very serious about my success in making sure that I can get some credit so I can become an engineer in America, he was very interested in sending me back, even though we can barely afford the ticket. But I go back there to take my annual exam and every single thing I do. But there was a one class, which was logic design system technology class, where the day the class was supposed to happen, one of the rich guy got sick. And because of that, they boycott the entire class because they didn't want him to get failed, but they were okay for everybody else to suffer the consequences of cancellation. But because I was a rebel and I didn't want to accept that as my fate, I continued taking my test. And then they came and then they took my paper and then they put the gun on my temple and they said, do you still want to do it at cost of your life? So of course I didn't want to do it at the cost of my life. I'm not that stupid. So of course, I started crying like a mess, and they tore the paper apart, right? But because my spirit was so strong that I still did not give up. I actually went to the place where they have the principal, and I said that I've come all the way from America. I can't afford the ticket to come back here again. I want to take this test because I want to be not failing the class. Plus, I won't have time after 1 or 2 years, whenever you guys conveniently feel like reissuing it, for me to be able to come back just for the one test. So I said, I just want to be safe. I want to do the test and I want you to accept because I was adamant that I'm going to do this. And of course, he looks at me and he's like thinking that this girl is completely crazy because how dare you ask like that being a woman? But because even few months living in America, somehow I had become braver, I think. Plus, I knew the amount of money my husband made. I knew we were not going to be able to afford it. So I was worried that how am I going to ever become an engineer? So it was coming straight into my path of what I think is the most important thing in life to do at that point. So he said that, do you belong to a union? And I said, no. And then he said, well, then you don't mean anything to me, basically, is what he said. Because you don't exist, because you don't belong to the union. And when he said that, that is when I felt in my heart that how much I am ready to say goodbye to this patriarchal culture.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And that story, when I shared it, because when I got denied by the 3 schools, I actually did not give up again. And I actually decided that which one do I really want to go to? And it was UC Irvine, even though it was the most expensive one. But the fact that I wanted to go out of all that's the one I felt like I have to go to. So then I found the name of the chancellor and I made an appointment because everybody had denied my admission. So I can talk to the chancellor. And when I talked to her and minded that my English was broken, I actually was able to convince her to give me an admission on a contingency to retain my GPA to be 3.5.
And you knew you could do it. And so it's so wonderful. So wonderful. Because
Right.
also there's no coincidence and because this is the time where we're bringing divine masculine with divine feminine merging, not one better. It's no coincidence that a female, right, would hear your story and have the compassion in the heart, even though she was a chancellor, right, to give you an opportunity, right? So, not to mention, they should have given you a scholarship. I mean, they should have given it to you free because you're so smart. Didn't you get through it in 2.5 years or something?
Yeah, but she did not give me for free. But I actually became a computer consultant because that was one of the best paid job at the time. And the very funny thing was that I actually had never understood. I didn't know anything about computer, right? Because I'm like new. And so, but I actually learned in one day that like, because people would ask you a question and then you answered, right? And I had to watch it. And I noticed that majority of the answer come to like 2 or 3 commands. So then, you know what? You pick up the pattern, right? And
So
then
you're
you realize,
coding. You're even starting to code.
so I kind of said that I knew that, okay, I have to do, it's almost like a checklist that probably doctor gets trained sometime. Is that, okay, 1, 2, 3, like you try this. And then of course, and it's kind of fun. And then you just keep learning. It's not that hard. So I actually really love that job because it was kind of a little bit fun. And I was able to afford myself, to pay for the place that I was at the UC Irvine, because that was one of the reason, my husband wasn't like thinking that we will be able to afford it, because it was a school that had a higher tuition.
Yeah.
But to me, that is the school I wanted to go, because I felt it in my heart that I meant to go there. And similarly, I followed the path. Right after graduation, I did not just take any job. I took a job that excited me. And that's how I ended up with the Hughes, and then the Boeing, and then the NASA, and all
So
of that.
just quickly go through that, because it's very interesting. Just okay. So you always had this internal GPS in you where you followed, and then the perseverance and the perseverance to push through. So you started realizing, okay, I'm picking up the code. Then you go to what? So you went to Hughes first, right?
Yeah, so Hughes was the first company that I started with, because they were working on a phone that nobody else had ever worked on. So to me, it was very interesting to consider that. And so when I started working them, I went through the whole software lifecycle. I learned all the coding languages, and that's where I actually learned something, that how, from the bits and bytes, how something completely can control, like a beam steering, which is how actually the entire 5G network works on. So I understood the cradle to grave technology, I understood my role, and I was able to pick up all these different places, because I always have changed my role every 2 years, because I always wanted to keep understanding every aspect of the hologram, right? Because then you can understand the whole enchilada. There's no other way for you to understand unless you embody it. And the way I embodied it is by taking these different roles and being at Hughes and being at Boeing, working on International Space Station program, which is where I did a lot of coding and connection and troubleshooting and all of that. And the very fact that there are so many different languages are used at different part of the programming, right? And depending on what layer they're sitting on, because everything is layered. So all that knowledge that I have acquired in my engineering world and my personal quest for understanding consciousness, combined with me going out and seeking the mystical knowledge and mystical information and learning and teaching it and converging it all in my personal life, which is full of drama and trauma up to this point, I think that opened the door for me to carry the pattern, carry the hexagon, right?
Right.
Because that's pretty much what we're all here to do, is to understand the human craft and ascend with our physical bodies.
Mm, beautiful. Exactly. That's the focus right now. And we'll get it in part two. We're gonna take people through how to do that. That's an amazing story. And believe me, she's only shared like a third of it, but it's just like it's incredible. The thing that occurs to me, which is obvious, is you had shared with me privately in a pre-talk that you were a Star Trek fan, right? And you didn't even understand English, but you'd be, and so is Mir. I know this is why you guys had to meet. I'm just like going, oh my God, you guys are like, it's incredible. And Amir had done a previous show with me where he was saying, oh, the women engineers in Iran are more brilliant. They work harder. They're better. He had just finished saying all that. And then you come into my life, right? Like, I'm like, bingo. Excuse me. So you're sitting there, Star Trek, I mean, or Star Wars was Star Trek, right? And you're loving it. So basically, that's resonating from where you're from. It's also resonating since all time to where you're going. So
That
now
is very true.
you're with a bunch of other Trekkies.
That is very true, actually. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right that every single time when, we are kind of in a cage, and especially when we are in a cage, then we are really looking for all these different exit strategy. And I didn't know that like Star Trek was my exit strategy, because I was watching that and the Knight Rider, right? And if you think about it, Knight Rider is all about autonomous, right? So
Yeah.
now it's like an autonomous vehicle. And then, and it was all to me represented freedom, like freedom from the reality that looks very different than, like that. It becomes a portal. And it's interesting, right? And to me, like, these are the recipe, right? This is the recipe on how you move from where you are to where you want to be.
Exactly, which we are going to get into. But there's a few more things that I think people will find fun. And we'll just, if you don't mind me interrupting, because we're just cutting to some really, really fun stuff. So you went through all of this stuff. And by the way, she's humble. She ended up the top and the systems engineer and control and hanging out with 5 generals. And she's the only woman and a bunch of other things that she's humble about and hasn't shared. So basically, not to mention 4 kids, one with, was it cerebral palsy, or one
Yeah.
with cerebral palsy who just graduated. 4 boys, yay, all successful, doing well. Okay, so back to you.
I think we need to put the shades back on.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
This is funny. Oh God.
maybe halfway. Okay, all right. So you ended up all these key places, and of course, the bottom line, folks, every time she applied to something, or they actually met her, put it that way, they just said, pick what you want to do. So that's a huge hint. They actually know who you are on some level, and you have proven yourself, and you got to go to areas that you wanted to and navigate through, and you basically are also said, okay. It's like you're really clear about your boundaries in a certain way, but then you also are like, realize the stepping stones, because you are just like you're going to do in the show, just like you did in your book. You're taking maximum major data that seems disconnected, and you're marrying it, boom, into the goal, which is the Artemis program, where you are now. So talk a little bit about that.
So the Artemis actually is a very interesting name because Apollo is a twin sister of Artemis. And the very fact that they named it like that, all the name nomenclature I've seen, even at NASA, even at SpaceX, they're very much, inspired by all our history, right? So it's very interesting that people who are involved in these programs or in the architecture of these programs, they actually are very connected with our history and our layered existence. And that to me actually is a good sign for humanity, because we want to be able to stay connected as we are going to take this consciousness to other planet, especially in this physical dimension. So right now the goal of the Artemis has been to go to the moon, the south pole of the moon, and have the woman land on the moon first, and then the man, first 2 crew mission. And that mission was initially planned when it started. The program started in 2020. It was 2024 September, but then the thing changes and it didn't happen. And right now, with the Mars has become the focus. So we'll have to see that how we do it. But the bottom line is that both Moon and Mars are important. They both have a role. Actually, Moon is very, very intertwined with us in so many ways that it becomes very delicate whether our physical presence will whether interfere with it or not. It depends on how strong the control is, because and that depends on how the overall consciousness of the Earth itself is. So that to me is an interesting conundrum. But at the same point, I'm assuming that based on law of attraction, all the right vibration and frequency will end up physically making it over there. So they are being filtered through the system, because it's everything that we do is affecting every single aspect of existence, going all the way to the primal source.
Exactly. And the moon is a perfect halfway station too, and to spy and see everything and all kinds of things. So what's your specific job in the Artemis program?
So right now, my specific job is that I'm leading all the system requirement documents that we hand over to SpaceX or Blue Origin, or depending on whom we're doing with mission with that European Space Agency. So we have these products that we basically give them as a product to ensure that their design is based on that. So basically, NASA drives the principle, the requirement, the functional and performance requirement, making sure that making craft human rated.
There you
And
go.
basically, I'm leading all of the documents that are very crucial for the mission that we were planning on doing, which was all about colonizing Moon.
and communicating, which is what you do through your book, what you do with talking, and what you're doing with all these different defense systems and everything. It's a metaphor for the whole thing and how they can all communicate with each other.
That is very true. And communication is one of my favorite aspect of rocketry because that without it, nothing is going to happen, right? So at the end of the day, communication, and that's as a software engineer, that is where I actually love that aspect of stuff. Is like how the bits and the bytes, how the bits and the bytes, and how the pipeline and the material of the pipeline and the quality of the information can completely transform you into ascension.
Yes, it can. Okay, we're going to do two quick things. Amir, you've been so incredibly patient. I'll send you some cheesecake. This is my favorite food. Okay. I think one thing, I know this is a little side note, but people will really appreciate that. You got to go into Elon Musk's company and you loved what you saw there. Just share what you saw there, an example of how he kind of runs the thing.
So yeah, I actually the first time I went to SpaceX in October 2018, I was supporting the commercial crew program, and I was a software subject matter expert. And actually, I was one of the one who was verifying the software on the Falcon 9 rocket. And so we had an opportunity to visit them in California. And when I went there, and of course I'm from California, so it was like a home away from home, and there was so many amazing things. And I go there, and the fact that his company is right on the #1 rocket road. So he's using the numerology, he's using the symbology, he's using it all. It's like you're already making an affirmation that this is going to be a #1 rocket. And then you go inside there, and half the people were on the rollerblades, I mean, they were basically skating. And then everywhere you go, there's different, I mean, the music was different when you go inside the cafeteria. And then on the elevator, it was all the Marvel's, characters, like really large size.
Superpowers. Mm-hmm.
So it was, and then,
What about
so
food?
Star Trek was there and the Marvel's character, both of them were embedded there, like you see them. And then they had this incredible brainstorming rooms where people can just sit and talk about, what they have to do. And food was basically, drink was all you can drink, but the food was you only pay $5 per meal, and it's like completely Las Vegas style buffet. So at the end of the day, the entire playground that's created by SpaceX actually can keep you there if you really love the work you do. The very fact is that, and basically I was feeling like I was watching a sci-fi movie because everybody was under 30, so I was very old according to every standard when I went there. I mean, that was another aspect of it. So yeah, there was all these things I noticed, and I was like, wow. And I actually felt that the people that was there, they were all very brilliant people, and they really understood what they were doing, and they are the representation of our next generation, and that's what we already have, the DNA that has come turned on.
Yes, we do. And they're probably all Star Trekky fans, actually.
At the DNA level, they probably already are, yes.
You probably didn't want to go home. You're around so many brilliant people. See, thank you for that inside look, because I think everyone's always interested in Elon Musk, and that's kind of interesting to see a corporation run so differently, right? And more progressive. Okay, one last question and then Amir. And this will involve both of you, actually. No, hold on. I think people should know this. One question. You stated in another show, and I have known this to be true because I've seen UFOs that took out the Challenger when they found something in it that only the captain knew and none of the crew knew. But that was another subject. But basically, my point is you noticed that rockets were only allowed to go off by some unknown force that we could say ET higher stuff, and that weather changed. Is that correct? So you've noticed the correlation there.
Yeah, I noticed the correlation more than once that the weather always within like a certain number of hours, like over 3, there was like I was noticing a pattern that the weather would always change, like kind of like extreme sometimes, and then they would even say that, oh, suddenly the weather has changed. So either like the bit will turn on or off, right? So whether the launch was there or launch wasn't there. So to me, because weather can easily be used to manipulate the timeline, even though we already know that there's orbital mechanics in play, of course. But what I'm saying is that that already suggests that how much, there, because that is such an important, crucial thing when we do. Every time when we launch a rocket, for whatever reason, whether we are going for self-exploration, whether we're sending a probe to Jupiter, it doesn't matter what the cause is, we are interfering at the level that it affects. It creates a very huge ripple effects.
There you go. So I want people to know that too. Well said. Thank you so much. Okay, last question. This is for both of you. Last question before we get into the nitty-gritty topics. Thank you so much, love, for being that revealing. And wow, I want a cheesecake right now.
This cheesecake business is infectious. Everybody likes cheesecake, of course.
Okay, so Amir and Shehnaz both, Shehnaz, sorry. I've noticed, and you know this, that not only are all the new kids coming in more awake, more aware, more up to speed, everything else, but the gift is given to people for a near-death experience. And what that does is they come out of that and they choose to come back to further educate humans about what the truth is out there and where they've been to speed things along. So my question to you both, and we'll start with Shehnaz and then we'll go to Amir, is have you had a near-death, several near-death experiences, one or whatever, that you felt accelerated you or created a fearlessness in you? Because they all come back with much less fear, generally speaking.
Yeah, so I personally did have one near-death experience, and that was in my ocean where we would go every week. Hawks Bay Beach is the name of the place in Karachi, Pakistan. And, we don't learn to swim or learn anything useful, according to me. But the point is that I didn't know how to swim, and I was taken by the, wave. And go through I did go through the whole feeling of going all the way to the womb, right? And I don't remember the exact age. It was probably around 10, 11. But I do remember that I basically suffocated in the water. I felt the suffocation. I felt the time, where you are suffocating and you're trying to stay alive, right? You want to stay alive, but then you ultimately realize that you're not going to be able to stay alive. So then you give in. And when you give in, so while you're struggling, is the only time you're struggling because you are deciding that you want to be somewhere, but you're not able to get there, right? Because in my case, I truly didn't know how to swim. So I was basically, swallowing water, but I was still hoping that somehow I can breathe in the water, but it wasn't happening. So I felt that now I have to just give in. I remember the death. I remember the acceptance. I remember that as soon as I accepted it, it almost brightened everything for me because I was able to see my entire life story going backward direction, like almost like giving me a perspective about how small everything is in a larger perspective and how we're playing or interplaying, right, in this whole big scheme called life. So that became very prevalent. And I do remember feeling all that. But then my dad actually ended up saving me. The very man who was my biggest challenge ended up saving me because he was the best swimmer. And, so I do remember being saved, but I do remember being close to death.
Yeah, which always opens up a whole nother layer of awareness for you. What about Amir? I don't even know if this would apply to you, but have you had any near-death experiences, or as a creator void dragon, are you out of body most of the time, just floating in the cosmos, the quantum plane?
Currently, I'm floating,
Yeah.
never completely leaving. About 10-15% in the body. I find it challenging to stay all the way in. I've had 12 altogether, and it
Near
gets
death?
easier. Yeah, mm, completely leaving, watching my vessel, heart stopping, temperature going down, and then time stopping. And it's easy to leave. Coming back is a pain in the butt. And it's usually a mechanism of cheating the holographic reality. There's certain laws of incarnation which prohibits the imports of certain advanced soul technology through the birth process. Near-death experience is a backdoor, is a cheating mechanism. Now, if the original soul decides to say, okay, I'm done, but the body is still viable, another soul can take over. So that would be a walk-in. And they take over the contracts and limitations of that incarnation, and then they go on and they play the game. It's usually, but for those that come back, the original occupant, it's a way of cheating the system. Every time you just bring back more. So fitting back into the original vessel, it's excruciating, but it gets easier. It gets well, let me put it in a more accurate way. It doesn't get easier. You get more resistant to the you just become desensitized to it. So it's a valuable experience. You mentioned the effect of becoming fearless. That is true. You get a glimpse of the big picture. It's very enlightening. Now, if you have denser energy closer to the 3D reality and you're attached to it, then you're in for a ride. You have to be purified. Something that greatly assists one at this event is just saying, I release everyone and everything, including the vessel, and up you go. It facilitates the transition. Then, well, of course, there's this visualization of the tunnel of light you go through, sometimes all the way to source. Then you remember, yes, please. Oh,
But
yes, please.
sometimes that tunnel of light was the false death traps, though, too.
Could be. Could be.
Are they still up there, by the way? Or since we're now starting the golden age, are they mostly all down?
A lot of that nonsense has been dealt with
Okay.
conclusively and aggressively. They don't wish to relinquish the control. Of course, if so, for example,
There was one.
let's look at our esteemed friend Shehnaz. Well, coming into this body, the fine print of your life cycle was modified to be born into an environment that is optimized to mess with you. This is not natural, and so this is being resolved. Similar in my case, similar to any powerful being of light. We had a little conversation a few days back on whom and what you are. That's going to blow people's mind if you choose to share.
So my question to you was, when you were actually, because when you asked the whole new, near-death experience, and astral travel, right? So I wanted to ask you, Amir, if you can help distinguish the two, because I personally, whatever I experienced, it was one time, and I classify that in a near-death. I have not astral travel, and maybe I actually believe in it, but I have never had a need to prove myself through the process for whatever reason, which is why I haven't done it.
Understood. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay. One is complete severance from the vessel. Usually the link between consciousness and the vessel is the prana, or the breathing. So the cardiovascular system, that's the key. Now, in a astral projection or travel, you have this thin cord which will always draw you back into the vessel, and that is through breathing. In fact, reaching the state where you can shake free from the energetic coupling to the body and the energetic structure. This happens through breath work. And so that is one of the processes that does help. Others would involve chemicals, hallucinogens, and so on. There are many, many ways to achieve this. The difference between that and near-death experience is the complete severance of that energetic coupling from the consciousness, or that shard of the soul, and the energetic structure of the body. That is disconnected. And so therefore, the amount of liberty that you experience in the near-death is just on a completely different scale. So being even anchored into physical reality has this limitation. Once that is removed, you are completely liberated. observing every aspect of the infinite soul, all dimensions, time and space are no longer a limit. While you are doing, let's say, projection or portal work, you're still aware of the body. So somebody shakes you, you'll come right back into the body. So that's the difference. Severance of link or maintaining a loose connection.
We call that the silver cord usually. And if that's disconnected, you usually can't return. Isn't that true?
That is true unless you kind of have a good reason. If that's agreed with the infinite soul and let's say the will of the primary source, that's a mechanism of bypassing a lot of rules. So you bring in technology to upgrade, let's say, the sentience of the planet in a state where it's so badly damaged that there is no other way. And the system is certainly filtering out that kind of technology. Certain souls, especially those that go through multiple events of death, they bring in the infrastructure. I count myself being fortunate. The body didn't deteriorate. But there are those that do suffer extreme side effects, damage to the lungs, the heart, the brain,
Yeah.
loss of movement, loss of speech, aphasia, loss of memory. All of this can happen. So it's not a straightforward and easy way to bypass, let's say, the mechanisms of limitation. That which we are all in agreement, they have to be removed. So the energetic infrastructure, including you mentioned the false light and the entrapment, distorted life reviews and interference with the birth process. All three of us have gone through this. Now, this is being resolved. The new kids coming in, they're coming in with more light. They don't need to go through these extreme measures of trauma to the soul and the body. So us sitting here, many of our esteemed audience listening to this, we're the ones that are the toughest.
Yes.
We're the super tough ones. We can just keep taking punishment and then just dusting it off and say, "Oh, come at me."
Okay. All right. Well, that'll be another show. We can get into that. Okay, folks, you've been really patient in this first hour. Thank you so much. I hope you're having fun. And let's get to the key topics. So, Shehnaz, to set the foundation of the topics we'll be discussing today, um, why don't you quickly explain why you chose to come from the angle of quantum physics as your approach to quantum beingness?
So, sure. Quantum physics, actually, when I started understanding, in my quest to understand consciousness, I went to mystery school. I went to school where I learned everything about metaphysics. Then I became a Kabbalah teacher because I wanted to learn about Kabbalah, and they had no teacher. So I became a teacher so I can teach everybody else and myself. And then I found the connection with the flower of life pattern. And then I went to Egypt and saw the flower of life pattern. So my quest is always kept adding up one layer by layer. And in that entire quest of understanding consciousness and then making sure that I can justify my understanding to other people who believe in science more than spirituality, I use and found quantum physics as the bridge from my ancient wisdom to the matter that exists at the subatomic particle level. And that blows my mind that in 1983, there is a paper written that proves how quantum physics is embedded in our law of attraction in this holographic universe. The paper is called the Gateway Experience. And that paper to me is something that they declassified actually in the late, close to 2017, 2018. But that information has been there since 1980s to people who have been playing in this playground at a different level. And the very fact that that information hasn't been taught in the school, hasn't been disseminated to normal people like us, so that we can take, so that we can understand it from other angles, is the missing piece.
Absolutely.
And that is the reason I actually found that right before I did my book, that paper came to me, right? So I was being directed because I was doing all this research. The paper came to me and I started connecting all the dots. And then I realize that we have so much proof that every single thing that we call magic can be explained by science. And that is the reason when even I came up with the name of the book, the quantum being, it was more like, we are a human being, right? So we are in a state of being. We're not like a human and then that's it. There's a being after that, which keeps us in that waveform. And that waveform, if I actually put the quantum next to it, then it really makes the message go home.
I like it better than multidimensional being. I like the quantum being because it incorporates a lot. Shehnaz, I'm going to quote from your book because I found it so beautiful. Which was, quote, perception, reality, and consciousness are intertwined. By understanding ourselves, we can enrich our daily manifestation and may succeed in making a fairy tale of our choosing by transcending our dreams into reality. Because at this point now, people do not understand how these things we're going to be explaining directly relate to the success, to the beauty, to the future, to the present, to the ever-present, manifestation. So just for right now, please, could you briefly define or introduce people to the simple definition of quantum physics? That would be useful.
So quantum actually means a discrete amount of anything, and quantum so quantum physics actually is the physics which is of the physics of the small. And so double slit experiment is the foundation of the quantum physics, and it happened more than 100 years ago when they actually were wanting to see what the electron is at the subatomic level, and just by virtue of wanting to observe it, they were collapsing the observation and seeing the electron in a particle form versus wave form. So that experiment actually made them realize that our consciousness is intertwined with our manifestation, right? So the energy and matter is interplaying with each other, and that's why every single thing is connected. And when you really keep on going on a deeper level, and what they're finding at CERN, it's like mind-blowing that how much we are interplaying in the very universe that we feel external to.
And so it's called the observer effect in the double split experiment, I think it was called, right? So our observation affects the momentum and what we are observing. And I think you said it puts a charge on it, which I found fascinating.
Oh, big time. And it's funny because yesterday, I was playing the game with my boys, and it was one of those games where the dice is being competed against each other. And I noticed that every time when you have already, because you know exactly what type of dice you want to get if you see the probability of the other person. So the entire game has a rule that both of them have to do the dice at the same time. Because if one person sees the other one, then you're going to be biased because you would want a certain thing and you will influence the result of the outcome. The point of the story is that awareness was there by the person who created the rule of the game, and that awareness does play in our daily lives. Is that when you already, that is why the helicopter mom does not work, because when you are so attached to someone that you can't live without them, then you are living through them.
Yes. Which a lot of mothers make a huge mistake about, much more than fathers. They do, because they're so afraid of losing love that they, it's like the Khalil Gibran. He said the children aren't from you; they come through you. So
yes,
love his stuff. Yeah. So basically, I think you were saying when you notice or focus on something, if I remember this right, the electron gets stimulated very fast from that. Is that true?
So yeah, so basically what it is that there is a whole bunch of layered approach happening, right, from the density for everything to come into existence, right? So it's like a whole dance with the light and the time that you are playing for you to even experience with anything. So there's an underlying principle that occurs that is way deeper than what you are interacting with. But at the end of the day, when the collapse, when you get into the position where you are interacting with the dense reality, then what you have done is that you have taken a lot of small steps in the Jacob ladder to get to that collapse. And when you start understanding that dance, which I do, which is why I wrote the book, The Quantum Being, is why I explained it in all these different chapters, because it's all happening all at once, but because we have to still explain everything in a two-dimensional word, it requires you to kind of go from all the different part of the hologram so it can all come together in a quantum collapse for you to converge and interact with the experience of your choosing. So,
and the collapse for people is what actually creates the next now reality, so that they get like how that did. Well said. Okay, Amir, give your inputs on that so far.
That is the mechanism of our holographic reality, precisely stated. Thank you so much for this. I have nothing to modify or change. Now, just adding some, let's say, conditions of what we experience. This process of collapsing, or let's say distillation or falling from higher causal planes into denser, let's say, planes of material or 3D existence. This is the law. This is described beautifully by our wonderful ancestors, as above, so below. There is this beautiful correspondence. And so the challenge as human beings, that what we have come to conquer and understand, is the purification of this process. You see, these are our cosmic laws. They never stop working. However, if you are coming from a position of distortion, what you actually end up manifesting is going to be distorted. And so there is going to be great emphasis on the mastery of your internal consciousness, from every cell of the body to every organ to the conscious mind, and then other aspects of your consciousness that exist in other dimensions, from the physical to the divine. That is the great challenge. And so the difficulties that mankind faces is a result of us being in a prison of the mind. We are not chained, we are not whipped. It's distortions in the form of belief systems. Many of these have genetic blueprints. Everybody in a specific bloodline has alcohol problems or drug problems or gambling. You see, this is that distortion which we have come here to purify. The laws are always there. Now, some of them described in more poetic ways by older cultures, for them to be transmitted and understood easier. Now, Shehnaz, your book is going to find its place as one of the masterpieces of spirituality of the 21st century. It is an upgrade of the same universal eternal laws. And so that is the key. How do we really play with this wonderful stuff? Then we have to start purifying the internal so we can basically cause something beautifully in the causal plane, and then as if by lightning, it will find the path of least resistance and consolidate into what we see as reality.
yes, and it starts with that awareness, right? That Bob Marley quote, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. And I think that that is very beautiful, Amir, that you actually are saying that if we can realize that, then our foundation can be pure and intentional. And then, we are funneling that light based on that foundation, based on that intention, then it can completely purify our existence in this physical dimension. And then it will affect if everybody does that part, right, with the consensus reality. And that is the recipe for bringing heaven on earth.
Yes.
And here comes the wonderful challenge. In certain peaks of humanity, acts of manifestation occurred with greater ease. And so humanity has gone through many periodic events of extinction. We've been wiped out and reseeded. And so it seems that this recent, let's say, batch of humanity after the previous ice age, we are most distorted in terms of spiritual and energetic and dogmatic interference. So now we are living in an ocean of non-believers, or let's put it more accurately, those who believe certain things are impossible. And so that does affect us. We're pushing against the tide, the powerful force of the collective of humanity. And so then certain events of, let's say, instantaneous healing, they're distorted. Now, the more of us that truly awaken and act in consciousness and awareness, this situation is going to change. And so that is so right now we are at the beginning of the transition period where things are the absolute worst. Then we're going to move towards the next Satya Yuga, the golden age. And very much so, this takes incredibly resilient, unusually resilient and gifted souls coming in. Not many of them not from this local universe. It is so difficult that it requires a cosmic level specialist to come in, go through it, be exposed to all the trauma and hardship, and then say, no, that is not me.
Yep.
Exactly. That's what we're doing here by showing up here, right? Saying no to this, breaking that pattern for good.
Exactly. So, let's talk about the different things that create the foundational blueprints for universal life. Okay, so the first thing, we'll take it by order. The first thing I think that's one of the most basic things for people to understand is referred to as morphogenetic field, right? Made more popular by several different artists. And so who wants to start with explaining morphogenetic fields? And we'll get into Flower of Life down the line, but if you want to combine that with hologram, what the hologram is, whoever wants to start with that.
Okay, I guess I'll do my best. So what it boils down to is that every single thing at subatomic level is interconnected based on the quantum physics, based on the quantum field theory, based on the string theory, based on the membrane theory. There are lots of, all of these theories are saying one thing, that we are all interconnected, right? So if we have that as a main foundation, then the morphogenetic field is the field that exists between us and everything we interact with. So there are fields between us and everything we interact with. It can be electric field, it can be magnetic field, it can be gravitational field, it can be morphogenetic field, it can be unified field, if you go into scalar energy. The bottom line is that there are many names, and then depending on which history lesson book you refer to, it's called different things. Like Tesla, referred to it as ether. So the point, the bottom line, underlying message is that yes, there is field between us. Even right now, when three of us are converging, we're using our laptops and we are affected by the field that is operating the machinery. But then we have our own electric field and aura, right? That you are saying that it gets changed, that you need sunglasses on and off. All of that, right, is interacting with us. And then depending on what we talk about and how it affects us, like when you were talking about my 7-year-old stage, now that to me was very personal and challenging. I didn't want to go there. So that was a whole different storyline, but I knew why you were doing it. So I was honoring that and doing it. And then here we are trying to understand that how everything is interconnected and how everything is affecting everything. So morphogenetic field pretty much proves that concept.
Yes. The oneness, the law of one, that we are all one being.
100%.
Amir.
Well, this is, again, thank you so much for so beautifully and, easy to understand in such a wonderful way presenting this. This is spot on. This unity of existence is one of the other fundamental laws. And so now as consciousness incarnated in a vessel, how to achieve understanding and experience of this, that is the greatest objective. And through, I like to call this process is remembering unified consciousness harmonics. We've got different aspects of consciousness, starting from elemental energies, coming then into subatomic and atomic, molecular, genetic, different types of energetic, EM fields, gravitation, and so on. And then leaving denser densities, lower dimensions, going up. We've got aspects of consciousness in all the realms, going all the way to the divine. And so there are limitations built into the current version of the human body that absolutely interfere with this process. To be specific, the chakra system. These are absolutely unnatural. So this field, like everything that occurs in natural, divine creation, is continuous. Many enlightened people have called this the rainbow body, where we don't have discrete vortices or centers of energy at a very, very limited interval of vibration, like a carrier wave. Like the same way you would see the visual spectrum of light gradually changing and going up the scale of vibration. This also applies to the, let's say, vibration or rapidity of consciousness. Achievement of this requires a process that is common amongst every single type of spiritual and magical practice, and that is the death of the ego. Removal of these, yes, please, go ahead. Just please, just go.
It's funny that as soon as you went into, because, I was trying to understand that because what you were saying about chakra, I've never heard from anyone before. So when you said that even last, few days ago, to me, I was very inquisitive about understanding your point of view. And today, when you said that, it made a lot of sense about how you were distinguishing with the chakra colors, which are distinguishable colors, versus the rainbow bodies. And if you think about the two examples here, they're very similar to comparing classical physics with quantum physics. So if you think about classical physics, it's all about discrete, it's all about label, it's all about putting boxes everywhere, it's all about exclusion. And when you think about the rainbow bodies, it's all about inclusion, it's all about like gradient of frequency, right? There's no fighting between each other. It's not a competition, it's a collaboration. So I think that is the recipe for ascension. And it made a lot of sense to me to just throw this comparison.
Absolutely. Now, the thing is, similar to the structure of a pyramid, I think there's great symbology in these structures. For example, the statue of the Sphinx, a human head and animal body, representing that I overcome shortcomings and base nature. Emotions and instincts are still there, they are honored, but they do not rule us. And so then again, with the sort of pyramidal structure, there are certain more dense energies. If not purified, they tune out in the form of noise, more subtle vibrations. So going up the scale of vibration, amplitude and energy content is reduced. And so we have to start from purification of the physical vessel. Then going up scales of consciousness. So this would be, it could be described as reclaiming our membership of the animal kingdom. Vitality, food, shelter, reproduction, healing. Then joining the family of humanity is overcoming shortcomings and base nature. Very, very fundamental. If this stage is ignored, that process of liberation is not going to occur correctly. Then to the heart, so solar plexus, taking responsibility, heart, acknowledging the consciousness. I think that is a wonderful way to describe quantum physics. I see all things as consciousness. Every blade of grass, every cell in the body, every particle in the cosmos is conscious. And so that would explain entanglement, the unified field or the morphogenic field. But then we go even higher. Truth. The truth of everything outside is within. So as a sentient being, a creator being, we are aware of all the intricacies and the true nature of everything, if we can access it. Then comes the process of liberation, death of the ego. Okay, all be gone. There is no me, there is no you, there is no here, there is no there. I am everything everywhere. Then using it to manifest, you become the master of the laws of the universe in the process of manifestation we described. And then finally, by purifying the connection between physical and non-physical, that's the unity or the yoga. the embrace of the beloved source. Linguistics fall short in describing how wonderful this is. So this is amazing that now this is being slowly but surely, forcefully accepted by the scientific community. They are very slow to progress. It comes one death at a time. But the evidence
Right.
speaks. The evidence is overwhelming.
Yes. And I was actually thinking about the pattern on the trestle board. Kabbalah, it pretty much does this beautiful job in explaining this affirmation, right? That we need to remind ourselves to. And that is where we need to all start converging, is that it's all interconnected, and it's time that we embrace that interconnection in every single action. And I wanted to bring this example, by the way, because yesterday, and I was thinking of doing a separate post for it, but I think this is so important to use that as an example of what we're talking about, is that even right now, the games that I play with my boys, right? We play board games, and one of the board game we were playing is called Risk, and the entire game is based on your happiness kind of depends on wiping somebody else's off, right? So I was actually talking to my boys because they were like, Mom, you're taking it too seriously. And it's just a game. It doesn't reprogram our subconscious. I said, no, but it does, right? So I had to like work with them, and they are like really incredible indigo kids. So of course they were saying that, Mom, this is fun. It's fun to kind of do that. And I said, well, the whole definition of fun needs to be redefined right now, because the mindset is still very competition, and it's more like our history. It's all about wiping everybody off so you can live happily ever after. I mean, how many people really has lived happily ever after when you really look at the history?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to kind of be a little naughty. Sorry, Marilee, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead.
Yes.
Now, see, there's two ways of representing flow of energy. One would be an infinite availability of resources, and one would be the scarcity. Both have their own place.
That's true.
Now, so if we are looking at the symbology of life in physical form, there is scarcity of resources and competition. And so within that, we can use the flower of life to represent this. It is a beautiful description of cellular division and physical life. And now if we take physicality and the limitation of resources out, the laws completely change. So we're then looking at the lily of life, right? So the free flow is not meant to be bound and trapped inside a single membrane. These two is just coming from a different point. So once there is limited resources, we have competition, survival of the fittest. These are laws of, let's say, physicality. There's absolutely a place for this management of resources, fair distribution, optimization, and so on, removal of loss, just making things work better. But then once we shed these are just illusions for a very particular purpose. Once these are released, then we're back to infinity. This is reflected in the healthy human being. Once we are connected back to that flow of energy, we don't depend on well-being and healing. We don't depend on anything external. It's between you and you, one a shard in the body and one your infinite source being, which is never ending. So these laws of one benefiting at the cost of the other, this is very much so materialistic.
Yeah.
And so the beauty comes in understanding that, of course, there is a place for these. We have to eat, we need resources, we need to have shelter and healthcare and so on. But once this is managed optimally, we are liberated from this. So this is now then the new definition of abundance. Abundance is not in the accumulation of all the resources in one cell. Once that is done harmoniously, and you are relieved from the, let's say, concerns of survival, of shelter, of reproduction, of maintaining your vitality for a number of years, then abundance is having free time to do what you love the most. And that's where we shine the brightest.
Exactly.
I have a quote: is my measure of success is joy.
Yep. That is a perfect tool for the measurement. Yes. Be in a state of joy.
So, okay, so you mentioned, and folks, a lot of you are watching podcasts. Please know that we have really, really good pictures. So you might want to go back through and scan through the video now and then so that you actually see the graphics of what we're discussing as we're going through this. Amir mentioned the flower of life. I believe the tree of life. Most people have heard of that. The Kabbalah teaches it. Mystery schools teach it. And what I found and why I wanted to bring two experts forward is Ashiana Dean, Ileana the Star Traveler, Lisa Renee, Guardian Historians, all felt, again, it doesn't have to be either or. So I'm open to the whole blend of everything. All felt that the tree of life that we're showing you now, the correct source base is actually 12, and that what was perverted, or shall we just say distorted, to 10, and in some cases 11. So that was their feeling. So I'm just showing you on screen the 12 alignment of the tree of life. Now, who wants to start with explaining the what's called the Sephiroth, the station's qualities, because they have multiple levels to that, and what this diagram displays, and if you think there's any credence in the 12, say, versus the 10 that has been taught, or the 11. So who wants to go first? Amir, do you want to go first with that?
No, ladies first.
No, Amir, you should go. I think I vote for Amir because really I want to see. But I'm okay either way.
Okay.
No,
I
okay.
know I know it's controversial, but we got a bunch of brilliant people right here. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that have been left out of the true mystery schools for hundreds of thousands of years. And I just resonate to the 12 one for some reason. So
me too, actually, based on once I understood your question and you sent me, remember the picture I sent you
yes.
both in the email? That to me completely makes sense because it encompasses the chakra, it encompasses the 12 grids. And yeah, the whole correlation between the 12 grid and the Kabbalah, which looks confusing only because of the way we see them, right? So that's where I think it gets confusing because Kabbalah talks about 10 Separa generally. And 10 Separa is the foundation of Kabbalah. And if you think about it, we are in a decimal system, right? So we are in a decimal system. And then you talk about the 12th grade and then even 13 chakra, according to Egyptian. So then it gets into the higher the number, the higher the field, and the higher the connection and closer to the primal source. So that is the fact, right? Because we are in the grid. Everything is connected through the grid.
Mhm.
So
Spot on.
That's beautifully, beautifully said. It's just where you're wanting to access and play at the time.
So
exactly.
this is a accurate description of what these nodes and edges describe. There's a correspondence in creation. No matter at what scale you observe creation, it all looks the same. It is a fractal.
That's true.
And so I describe the whole thing as this infinite fractal of existence. And so now our little universe is one of the tiny little, let's say, blobs in the infinite fractal. No matter if you look at the structure of a galaxy or a sea creature, you see the same types of patterns. So these laws are built perfectly and they can be implemented. Scale really does not exist. Time is time. Location, these are just properties of the final levels of density, the sediment at the very bottom. So we're describing the different levels of vibration, and so we're stuck with a depiction of this. Now, our ancestors, well, actually, let's go even more fundamentally further back. The way the human brain understands meaning is through a two-dimensional pictorial form called limas. They're images. Egyptians use these brilliantly. And even when we want to articulate something, we go back, there's a process of lemma selection. We choose the correct pictorial form, and then it's transformed into, let's say, movements in the muscles, and it's articulated. But essentially, these are how we understand. This is just how our brains are hardwired. So, describing an infinite fractal of existence, our ancestors were faced with, okay, how the hell do we do this? And then they went to 2D representation. So we shouldn't really scrutinize that representation. We should use it as an instrument for greater understanding. Now, the fundamental principles depicted in this type of representation, using, let's say, the graph theory or network theory, because essentially everything is connected, is talking about different important stages in human evolution. Step by step, you deal with this, then you deal with this, then you deal with this. It's just describing the very specific settings of our reality and how we climb the ladder and become liberated. This is reflected in so many different ways. At the foundation, there is love, there is grace, there is joy, and unimpeded evolution of consciousness. Now, this exact tree of life, the Kabbalah, this has been inherited from the Egyptians. We've got the Egyptian tree of life, same exact thing. Goes back to the Atlanteans, same exact thing. You go even further back, and I mean pre-Earth back, when you can go into the Akashic records, the same description as if they have seen into the future, the process of the Kujikiri, centers in the body and links between different zones of consciousness. Okay, fair enough. Some authors may have left out certain nodes, maybe certain edges connecting different dimensions. We are connected to everything, everywhere. The problem lies within the denser reality, which we have to clean.
Right. Very, very well said. I love it.
A lot of people have, when I've discussed with them, they go, Source loves 12. And then the
Why? Why? Does Source have 12 fingers?
and we're not limited, but they go like, oh, the 12 apostles on this, the 12 da-da-da-das and this,
Okay.
12 dimensions, the 12 chakras, the 12th of this, the 12.
Okay, now we're looking at here and now. This is not true everywhere. In this universe, life, based on the certain fundamental laws that were put into place, it facilitates the existence of certain octaves of reality. Within a certain domain, life can exist. Then there seems to be a barrier with its own gatekeepers, and then we have another dimension above where life can exist. So, for example, we are shards of the beloved source incarnated into physical bodies, and so we live on the third dimension. There are elemental beings that are completely non-physical, far more ancient than humanity, and they live in the fourth dimension. Other beings born in the fifth. We go up to 12. So these are the numbers of these, let's say, bandwidths, octaves within which life can emerge. And just because one is born in the 12th dimension doesn't mean they're any good, any better, or any worse than us. As long as free will exists, there's always the possibility of going wrong. And then above this, we have the more fundamental or primordial types of domain, primordial light, primordial sound, and then the divine void. So top down, this is the structure that has been put together in this universe. Maybe in other settings, of course, the speed of light will change. The constant of gravitation will change. The discrete bands of energy around which electrons dance around the nucleus of an atom will change. These are all set into place. And if these laws are done wrong, life will not emerge. So we're looking at a local snapshot of existence, here and now, and what we're working with.
So because that's what we're concerned more, is just the local. That's well said, because that's what people are interested in on Earth. So you're basically saying whether it's showing 10 stations, 10 qualities, 11 or 12, it doesn't matter. They're all valid representations of the truth.
At a certain point, you see, we just need so much encouragement to elevate and shed the chains. At a certain point, light is going to reach back. This is one of the other fundamental laws of the universe, the law of liberty. If you reach to the light, it will reach back. That is the law. So we just need to unearth ourselves sufficiently and then reach with an open consciousness and clear heart it's going to do, that lightning is going to strike. Now, some may do this at, let's say, stage 4. Some may need to go to stage 12 and still it doesn't happen because they haven't done a very good job in shedding the density and the illusion and the distortions of the mind.
Yes. Walter Russell calls it handshaking. And, quantum physics says that you're seeking what is seeking you, right? So there is that convergence occurring from both sides. And I think I understand. So one of the things that Amir is highlighting that we need to be aware of is that when you are learning to walk, right? So then you have to take a step in a way that can get you to walking, right? So that is how everybody needs to take their own ascension in a way that rather than comparing it to other people, they should compare it to themselves, that where we are and where we want to go. Like what type of steps we need to take in that Jacob ladder that can make you successful. So that way you can keep on keeping on, right? Because that is what we're all here to do, is to not tear us apart, but keep us together.
Right. It's like, you like this food, I like this food. We'll just make it work. Okay, interesting. Well, I really appreciate this because, as you know, there's people that are like going, "No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right." All through, whatever. So it's a whole symbology. And I did write this because I thought your definition, Shehnaz, was so beautiful when you said Kabbalah means to receive light, where light is energy and energy is information to transcend God within us. Kabbalah teachings explain how energy transforms into matter.
Exactly.
Who wrote that? No.
That's why I'm saying that the question is, how do we all coexist? And the answer is be the quantum bee.
Yeah.
Have to.
Let's just dance. Let's just have fun, right? Let's laugh. Let's accept the fact that everybody's saying the same thing with different labels.
Yes. Okay.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much. And it's already been 2 hours, so we need to close and we will continue with more parts explaining the different aspects. And I hope you've all enjoyed that. I have one last question that I'd like to ask both of you. And Shehnaz, knowing what you know, what is the one thing you can share or suggest for everyone to empower themselves as a quantum being?
This is one of the one I always say, is that the power we seek is the power within. And every action is taking us closer to our next law of attraction, equal experience. So take the right action.
Okay. And Amir?
Wow, it's hard to top that. Let's see. I usually come up with something acceptable. Um, I'm going to go to Rumi. We are a drop from the mighty ocean of the beloved source, and yet we are the mighty ocean in one drop. Separation is an illusion. And so, with an open heart and an open mind, we must keep searching for the truth, that fundamental truth that we are the beloved source incarnate in these bodies.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Actually, our woman, right, Marilee?
Yes. Well, that's an Egyptian two thing. So, yes. Okay. So, Shehnaz, share your contact and your book and how people can get hold of you for if they want one-on-ones, coaching.
Yes. So for me, my first name, last name.com. So Shehnaz, SHEHNAZSONI.com is my website where you will find everything that I offer in terms of one-on-one sessions and course and my book information and what is upcoming in my world, because I'm a public speaker now, traveling all over America for sure. And my next one is happening in March with Gaia TV.
Great. Yeah, I saw that. That's wonderful. Thank you. And Amir, you share where you can be contacted for your great healings, for people to see your videos, and what you're going to provide for people.
Of course. So you can find my website, wizardofwivenhoe.co.uk. Same name, Wizard of Wivenhoe, on YouTube and Facebook. I do healing work, and also I teach a spiritual modality called the Kujikiri. And with many, many thanks and infinite gratitude to Merrily, I'm also presenting a short book called Guaranteed Unnatural Evolution, the Universal Matrix according to its creators. So yes, this I'm going to basically be selling with a PDF format on my website.
Wonderful. And you guys, I will tell you that the pages, it's short, it doesn't take long to read, are, if I had had those 20 years ago, read those pages, it would have saved me 20 years of research. If you would only going to read something short, that's what you want to read. So please buy that. And also, we trust your integrity that just because it's PDF, you're not going to Xerox it and share it, but it is something wonderful to give to gifts. And also, if you want, as we said, to Shehnaz's book is spectacular for everyone from beginners to advanced. So all right. So thank you so much, you two, for your generous time. I know you're super, super busy. And thank you, family out there, for your curiosity and willingness to be educated. And until next time, upwards and onwards. We love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.